Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Brad Paisley called Love and War. I've been anticipating this album a fair bit more than even I expected in retrospect. Hell, up until a few weeks ago, I wasn't even aware that Brad Paisley had a new album put together outside of a few scattered singles, some that didn't even make this album. But the more I thought about it, the more I got kind of intrigued by some of the possibilities that Love and War represented for Brad Paisley, because I do like him a fair bit as an artist. He's got natural charisma and a sense of humor. He can write great hooks and shred like nobody's business. But most importantly, he's willing to take creative risks when it comes to the direction and subject matter of his material. People rag on albums like Wheelhouse and songs like Accidental Racist for being thoroughly misconceived, but there's a part of me that prefers him taking big swings for the fences, because more often than not, he can actually stick the landing. Southern Comfort Zone, Those Crazy Christians, Officially Alive, the collaboration with Eric Idle of Monty Python of all people called Harvey Bodine, and especially the knockout deep cut Karate, they show a real sense of wit and humor that sure might tilt a little silly, but remains endearing regardless. And when you realize how creatively stifled he felt on the otherwise solid album Moonshine in the Trunk, even though for a chilled out party album he had his fair share of great songs, especially American Flag on the Moon, I was all for Brad Paisley taking some time off and then coming back really hard, because despite the deep state of confusion afflicting mainstream country, I'm pretty sure that he's been carefully listening to the indie scene acts taking big risks and taking copious notes. In other words, even despite being pretty lukewarm on the lead-off single Today, I had a lot of high hopes going into Love and War. So, okay, what do we get with it? Well, I'm of a few minds on this album. For one, if you're an easy sell for Brad Paisley's template, solidly guitar-driven, modern country and fitting in the mainstream with an affable sense of humor, strong hooks, and a general sense of good-natured corniness, you'll probably like this album a fair bit. Hell, I like it! Even if there are a few points that got some groans from me instead of chuckles. And I respect Brad Paisley a lot for deciding that instead of playing to pop music, he's gonna make one of his most straightforward country albums in years. Now, to some people, that would be considered a risk and be worthy of a lot of applause, and yet I can't really say I'm all the way there with Love and War. I know some people will say his experimentation on this album feels kinda calculated, of which I would disagree with on some level. There are some chances being taken here, and he pretty much sticks the landing on all accounts, but it does feel like a very comfortable album for him, almost a safe album. Now, that doesn't mean that it's bad by any stretch. In fact, I'd say it's easily his most consistent record in years, and I know he's gotten frustrated with a lot of critics coming down on him for this sort of thing in the past, but you know, there's a part of me that finds Brad Paisley a lot more interesting when he steps outside of his comfort zone and he does swing for the fences. Most because I know for a fact that when he puts the time in, he's actually capable of getting there. Now, that is a lot to say to open up an album that, like nearly all Brad Paisley records, is pretty damn straightforward when it comes to its sound, its delivery, and a lot of the content. You're getting a country singer who's got an easygoing, affable charm that can feel refreshingly earnest at its best and exasperatingly corny at its worst, but doesn't often get in that territory. And while I wish he would belt a little bit harder or push into some more emotionally trying or complicated territory, it's actually a little bit startling how attractive he can make relatively middle-brow commercial sentiments and make it feel pretty damn authentic, all things considered. Where you might have any number of bro country artists who cater to the basic bro mindset in the worst way possible, when Brad Paisley does it, I can't hate this. He's that good of a populist while being insightful and forward-thinking enough to not pander to his audience. And yeah, I'm not gonna deny that there's a fair chunk of the jokes and the sentiments on this record that very much appeal to your dad specifically, but that in itself isn't a bad thing if it actually sticks the landing. Take One Beer Can, where the kid in the story doesn't clean up well enough after his party and he ends up grounded for the entire summer. And yeah, it's a goofy song that highlights actual consequences, but Brad Paisley frames himself as empathetic to both parties, and it doesn't quite feel as hectoring or pandering as it could. Somewhat similar case for Selfie, #theinternetisforever, which treads right up to the line of lecturing kids to get off Snapchat and Instagram and have a little bit of class here, but it avoids landing directly in that territory because A, Brad Paisley talks like he actually understands social media, and B, it's not like it's not true to a certain extent. Even if I think that Weird Al beat him to the joke 3 years ago with wacky, which, yeah, in my opinion, is a better song. And that's also not saying that Brad Paisley doesn't have a serious side. Sure, he got his Vegas hookup song with Mick Jagger of all people on Drive a Shame. Side note, they have a ridiculous amount of chemistry, and Mick Jagger somehow still sounds great here, good for him. And then there's Go to Bed Early, which for a hookup song is incredibly corny, almost to the point where it flips around and actually becomes kind of endearing. But Brad Paisley also has a knack for getting to real emotional weight in his songs. And honestly, I wish he went to this territory, this sort of dramatic territory, a lot more. The title track, for one, it might take a broad stroke to dealing with veterans issues, but he and his collaborator John Fogerty sound righteously angry enough to justify it. It's a pretty damn great song. Last Time for Everything actually picks up some real weight, as it touches on moments of finality that you can tell have impacted Brad Paisley on some level. He sells the song well. And sure, Dying to See Her might feel a little bit schmaltzy, as it tells the story of an old couple where one partner dies and the other loses some will to live, until you actually know someone in a similar situation, and Brad Paisley and Bill Anderson's writing comes from a very real place. The song actually connects. Then there's The Devil Is Alive and Well, another entry in Brad Paisley's songs about God and faith that don't shy away from showing exactly how modern religion can kind of miss the message, especially when people use God's name to justify something that isn't based on love. Even though he's not aiming to be directly political there, it kind of has that resonance. The issue comes that for every song like that, we get songs like Today that feels like a thuddingly obvious wedding song, or Gold All Over the Ground, which might interpolate from a poem written by Johnny Cash, and Paisley actually gives credit, but also shows how some of the romantic language can feel a little dated or questionable nowadays. To quote, "I'd bundle you in kindness until you cling to me." And that first verse might actually get worse than that in the bars. Then there's Contact High, which pushes its weed metaphor a little bit too far, and Solar Power Girl, which can feel like a song that Brad Paisley specifically wrote for that girl who needs light and sunshine in order to be happy in an endearing but kind of clumsy way, and Heaven South, which is exactly what you think it might be, but it can also feel like Brad Paisley is taking some easier material, even if it is generally good and you can tell that he is writing it. Swap these songs out for tracks that got a little bit more introspective or took a little bit more of a chance with the content, I'd probably like this album a fair bit more, even if Brad Paisley might actually stumble in that attempt, but hey, it would be a chance. And even saying all of that, one fact does remain. Brad Paisley's got great instincts when it comes to production balance and hooks, because for as many issues as I might be able to find with some of the writing, on a compositional level, this album is solid as hell. Some people might be a little bit leery when they see production credits from Timbaland of all people, but in comparison with a producer like, say, Busby, Timbaland knows a great guitar-driven groove when he hears it, and he gets the hell out of the way. So a song like Grey Goose Chase becomes an infectious country stomper complete with ruckus fiddles, and Solar Powered Girl throws in pedal steel and prominent banjo that show more than a few sideways glances at High Valley, and I mean that as a compliment considering how much I really did like that last album. Well, beyond that, again, this is arguably Brad Paisley's most country record in years. Sure, the guitar lines are busy, but he's got a great knack for tone, he's got solid bass lines to anchor them, and he knows enough to balance out with plenty of fiddles and pedal steel without relying on drum machines. This album actually has some real groove to it. Sure, you can tell on songs like Contact High, he's obviously going for the Chris Stapleton sound, with the slightly lower fidelity in the vocal pickup and the waltz cadence in 3/4 time, and with the mandolin on Gold All Over the Ground, he's paying tribute to a more traditional sound that arguably isn't in his best wheelhouse, but at the end of the day, he's gonna rely on relentless grooves and a fair few guitar solos. He's much more comfortable in rock and that sort of country than R&B, and his heavier tones on Drive a Shame and the title track prove, although that Prince shout-out on Last Time for Everything actually feels very earnest, given the guitar player that Brad Paisley is. You can tell that did, again, come from a real place. But at the end of the day, you're gonna remember the hooks. This is a mainstream country album, and songs like Go to Bed Early, the power ballad The Devil Is Alive and Well, even if I'm not really crazy about Solar Power Girl or Selfie, hashtag the internet is forever, they do kind of really stick in your head. But if we're comparing this record to other Brad Paisley albums, yeah, I'd say it's his most consistent album in some time. If you are a Brad Paisley fan, you're gonna love this album. But again, I wish he would take more steps outside of his comfort zone and take a few more risks. At this point of his career, with his longevity, he's got nothing to lose at this point, and with indie country's growing prominence, even towards the mainstream, he's got everything to gain. And it's not like he's incapable of this sort of experimentation either. I remember Play and Wheelhouse, even that duet with Demi Lovato that didn't make the album cut, that was pretty good. I feel like he could aim higher, and I don't know why he doesn't. But at the end of the day, we have to judge what we got in this album, and that is indeed pretty damn good in my books, netting a strong 7 out of 10, and certainly a recommendation, especially if you want to hear a couple great mainstream-ready singles and rock collaborations that actually stick the landing. Again, it's a very good album, but I'm gonna keep waiting until Brad Paisley puts out another great record. Just saying. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I'm a little bit surprised how long this review ran, but hey, I guess I had a lot to say. Beyond that, if you guys want to buy the record, links in the description below. Got the poll up there if you guys want to learn anything more about, hey, I want to hear your opinions on Brad Paisley. I always get weird responses when I come to reviewing his records. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process, the link to my Patreon is right there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once per week you guys get to add records to my schedule if you're in the higher tier. And it's pretty jam-packed right now. You want more details? Right there. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.